Hey, just finished up playing candidate, and if you've been following it, you know that. But otherwise, you might just be interested in a review. I bought this game because I like it. I've played it before a couple of times. I knew I liked it. I've only played it in opposed play. This is the first time I've played it solitaire. I don't think it's a great solitaire game, even though I had a good time with it. What can I say about it? There's a few things you really should know about it. First of all, the luck bluffing element. That combination. I mean, there's a lot of luck in the cards you draw, and then there's this bluffing factor. That's the whole game. I mean, if you don't like those aspects, you are not going to like this game, but if you like them, you may really, really enjoy this. On the other hand, as a simulation of the nominating process in the United States, at least in recent times, which the board, the electoral votes clearly make that it's fairly recent. You know, New York is down to 33 or whatever. You know, it's from, I think, circa 1990 or maybe 80 or whatever. The game came out in 91, and it's clearly influenced by some of the trends that were already starting to show up from the Euro games over here. But it fails utterly. I mean, as a simulation. It is ridiculous. Now, I mean, there's sort of this aspect of, yeah, some ideal sort of way, this might be kind of the model of how elections are conducted. But look at the results to begin with. Every single game I've played of this, there might be a player like there was in this one who just looks like they're out of it. But I don't think I've ever seen one where somebody walked away without taking a state. Now, if you put 6 people in a primary in the United States, it's unlikely that every single one of them will win at least one state. Usually with a 6-person primary, there's a couple people in there who are just don't belong at all and have no chance. And they know that, but they may be up there making a point. You know, your Dennis Kucinich, for example. Your Reverend Sharpton. So they're trying to influence the party platform to some degree. They're trying to get an awareness maybe of their issues that really the media is ignoring. So usually there's a handful, maybe 3, maybe 4 people who are really in it. In this game, everybody's in it. You know, I mean, and that's clear. So even from the results, it comes out kind of silly. It's also the groundwork, etc. Yes, it's hard to win a primary where somebody has the groundwork down, but if it's a big state and you have a good hand of cards, you've got a good shot. And there's no real reflection of that kind of information. You know, polling is done during the campaigns long before primary day, and it often becomes very clear there are certain states that are going to go one way and you're not going to move them. And likewise, there are the battleground states. It doesn't reflect any of that. It doesn't reflect an actual calendar of the primaries. It's a game. It's not a simulation. And to me, every game, I really link to the subject matter. This is a subject matter I like, but I'm unaware of any political primary game that does a good job. Road to the White House, for all its complexity, etc., falls prey to many of the same issues. It does have some advantages. It does have, for example, the advanced rules that handle primaries and caucuses and the right dates that differentiate between them. But still, it doesn't cover for some of the deal making, etc., that goes on in caucuses, where it's not really the guy who campaigned the hardest necessarily, or whatever. there are a lot of interesting factors that are just abstracted away in that. And then when it comes down to it, it's again, well, let's stop talking about that and go to this game. So in this one, then, it doesn't matter how well you did in the state. Once it goes into the undecided voter pool, or once somebody gets knocked out, those states are committed through a very random seeming process. You play another round of campaigning or whatever. So, you're using the same mechanisms, and that's, again, nice for a game point of view, but it doesn't really convey the flavor very well. So, what I'd say is, although the game kind of gives you this feel that you're really running a campaign, etc., when you start to look at it and think about it, you realize this has nothing to do with the reality. One thing I usually do is I go over components. This was an old game. You saw the map. Nice hard map. I think it's fairly pretty when it doesn't have little stains on it from mold or something. And I'm kind of disturbed that I got that in that shape. These little not player aid cards, but the cards to mark groundwork, they're really cheap seeming. I mean, they're not quite paper, but they're very light stock. These are fine. I think all the counters are great. Little cards, tough to shuffle. A little easier than GMT's really stiff cards, though. They'll probably wear out if you play too much. Rules, not very good. I think some major things are left out. Others are sort of hinted at but not clearly stated. They're not necessarily organized well, but, there's only a little less than 3 pages of them. This is just designer's notes and advertisements and stuff. So, you can get by, and you can probably figure out questions like, oh, hey, when do you reshuffle the deck and stuff like that. Our group tended to have standby default rules for issues like that. Who gets, how do you deal when there are too many cards? But there are also other things like, hey, can you hold your cards at the end of the turn? Nothing says you can't, so there are certain stipulations so that if you have, if you win the groundwork, if you're the favorite in groundwork, you end up not being able. Where you can play cards on people, etc., it's all a little gray. But I think a reasonable person can come up with it fairly easily. And all the games listed on it, on the side, these are all, well, 2 of these are German-looking things floating on now. Maybe Adelverpflichtig. Floating vagabond, I have no idea. It's an interesting slice of time, though. What's on here, a reprint of Choir. Definitely, you're seeing that influence. I think it's a fun game. Time. I didn't go into time. Probably a little longer than most Euro players are used to. For me, this is a fluff game. 2 to 3 hours, probably. For modern gamers, I guess that's considered a heavy game now or something. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's a good... the game itself has good mechanisms and a lot of excitement in it. And you're never really out of it until the convention. Once the convention happens, you can get knocked out. But as you saw in my playing, you can come back from a terrible, terrible position. So I'm glad I picked it up. I'm a little saddened by the board condition, but what have you. That's what happens when you buy used games, I guess. All right, cheers.